Hello, every folks, and good morning. Okay, so I want to talk to you about something. So oftentimes I see the thought here over endgame dual wielding builds being super powerful or whatnot, and I wanted to throw a little bit of a comparison in here. Because what if I were to tell you dual wielding was a little bit of a scam? Okay, so let's go ahead and get into this here. So we've got two different definitions of dual wielding here for the end game. We have the skirmisher and we have the standard dual wield guy. Both of them are going to be bringing in counterattack and parry as their kind of secondary backups here, and both are going to be set up with partial counters to each other. I went ahead and gave the dual wielder an advantage here with both lightning weapons, one with a counterattack effect on there, and one that is a endgame sword here that's going to give you slightly better numbers. And then over here on Vice's end, I've gone ahead and set him up for elemental coverage. So we're going to have the two fight it out and go ahead and see how it goes. So he's going to go for a double attack here. Going to go ahead and go for his two attacks, takes off about a quarter of his health, and ends up getting a parry. That's a pretty solid result out of him. Okay, so we see on Vice's end, he's if he were to go and go for an attack, he would basically attack. He would end up getting counterattacked as well. So we're just going to go ahead and set him up with a dodge real quick and have him wait just a moment, because it's just fine. As you may notice over there on the right side, he's actually going to go ahead and get a chance to attack again, even though Azelston is currently speed-starred. Vice is still going to outspeed him in order to get a second turn, so we're going to go ahead and throw that attack on him. He's going to go ahead and get a counter-attack back, and we're going to go ahead and wait. Alright, Azelston is now going to go ahead and, again, kind of doing a suboptimal thing here about attacking from the front, but he's going to go ahead and get his attacks off right there. Going to go ahead and trade off for another back and forth here in just a moment, whenever we get around to it. We'll explain what's going on behind all of this stuff in a little bit here, but we'll see what ends up happening. So he goes for the attack, gets the parry, gets the counter, and we're going to go ahead and wait, and then we're going to have Vice go ahead and go forward here. And, oh, you know, would you look at that, he's gone ahead and gotten himself an 862 here. He's going to go ahead and high roll into an 864, and he's going to end up winning despite having a elemental disadvantage. So what on earth just happened there? So, even though it was close, and this is again considering that Vice was fighting at a disadvantage both stats and gear-wise and everything else, you might be wondering what the hell's the deal with Azelston getting beaten there. You can repeat this, several times over, and you'll basically get a similar result. Occasionally it'll go back and forth, but again, with an advantage, you'd think Azelston would win that exchange every time. So before we get into stuff like relics or what have you, because technically speaking there is a, partial resistance of 13% of some of that damage off of these boots right here, but it's not the relics. The thing is, it's all about coverage, it's all about speed here. So as you noticed, even with Speedstar activated the entire time, Azelston was barely keeping up with Vice there. They were more or less going back and forth. There was one time that he was able to basically effectively keep up speed-wise, and even then, it still ended up not being enough to actually win the fight for him. Also, just to kind of point this out here, if you're wondering why I didn't go ahead and give him other items here, actually, I think, technically speaking, I guess I could have given him Luminance or Daedalus, but either way, for some reason the Buccaneers weirdly limited on their armor. Mostly I was just picking two units that are generally known for being good at this particular thing, but the reason that dual wielding ends up being a little bit of a scam is down to the RT cost. So, when it comes to recovery time, I've mentioned this a few times up to this point, but recovery time on pretty much any weapon past the mid-game is going to be fairly high. So he's spending 30 on this, 33 on this. His natural recovery time for a second turn with all of his equipment is 104. So effectively, this goes up to... he's effectively raising his next turn's cost by about 60%. Over here on Vice's end, he's only spending 33 if he decides to attack, but if he decides to go for a buff or go for a finisher instead, that finisher is only costing 30 by itself and easily does, twice as well, not even twice as much, it was almost 3 times as much damage, depending on how you want to calculate whether it's for one weapon or two. But either way, having access to these elemental finishers is going to give you a damage spike that is going to far outpace the speed loss that you get from dual wielding is kind of the main point I'm trying to get across here. So either way, this was just, again, to kind of illustrate a point, and this is with dual wielding working at its fairly optimal here. So both of these weapons would be getting a bonus from matching his element. Both of them would be getting a bonus from countering his element. So this is an ideal scenario for Asleston. He was already buffed from the get-go. The only thing that he was missing was his evade triggering, which, I mean, even then, that's kind of why Vice had a counterattack in this particular case. Either way, I'm hoping you get the general idea here over why I keep saying to go for like one weapon in each hand and two finishers instead of double attack. Because double attack is fun for example, situations like this. Well, I went ahead and broke his build already. But situations like this guy where maybe you're going for, you know, essentially multiple different debuffs at once or something, and you can find weapons that are light enough to potentially pull that off. So, like, for example, you can go for stun, silence, and poison at the same time with a ninja, and the recovery time on these lighter weight weapons is only going to be 13 and 22. So, essentially, the two of them combined are almost the equivalent of an endgame weapon, while at the same time actually outputting more damage than one of those endgame weapons, essentially allowing you to go for 3 debuffs as well as comparable damage at the expense of a shield. You know, obviously this will depend on your situation, but that's kind of where this is all kind of coming to bear here. Basic attacks are useful for generating MP and things like that, so, you know, obviously at any point we probably could have had Asleston switch over to a different finisher, but all the same, hopefully you get the general idea. Obviously, you can go and mess with these tests however you'd like to get whatever results you'd like, to some extent, but either way. Hopefully, you get the idea. As far as dual wielding goes, it is very expensive, and frankly, in my opinion, you're better off going for something a bit more tricky with it. Like, for example, pairing a poison dagger. I actually don't have that on her right now, but for example, pairing the Dragon Fang is oftentimes a really good setup for for any kind of counter-attacking and/or dual-wielding build. And/or just going specifically only for one element, but again, it's going to have its downsides. It's flashy, it's fun. You're going to have some weapons that are going to have additional effects on there, but that being said, you also get a lot of extra effects off of something like going for coverage instead. So, like, for example, you may have noticed this is the same build that I was running on my Beast Tamer for quite a while, just because having those free dead shots on a Beast Tamer is pretty useful for getting stuff within taming range. And at the same time, again, answers for air, answers for lightning, for water, for ice, as well as answers for fire, because all 4 of these ones effectively become water when they're used, but also have a debuff on them as well as Mantis Strike, basically being the best of both worlds, being a double attack that also is not terribly expensive, that also will be potentially scaling up really well with crits. So, like, axe and bow, I think, is a fantastic combination. Something like a dagger and bow is pretty solid. Like the other day when I was talking about the predator knife guy, I was specifically talking about tomato over here because, again, good coverage. You basically have here. You know what? Let me go switch to this real quick so I can actually switch. What does what. But you got 3 different coverage options, as well as a good neutral scaler with Overwhelm. Essentially stuff like Double Impact. It's not necessarily for damage. Double Impact is really good for carving past evades. So if you're running into stuff like Pirate's Graveyard, you're looking to farm out those areas, having those double attacks are really good for getting evades out of the way. Daggers are a really lightweight weapon, and he's got a counterattack effect on there. So effectively, he just basically attacks with his finishers, but he goes ahead and carves through evades with Double Impact, keeps Steadfast on there so he does get knocked off. He's not necessarily looking for flashy damage. He's doing just enough to be consistently good in, well, whatever situation he's thrown in when it comes to endgame areas, you know? Anyway, so I hope that was helpful. Y'all have yourselves a good one, and take care.